Let everybody get settled. All right, thank you. Welcome to Puget Sound Garden Railway's 2023 clinics. It's like we got a good showing. We got 7 presentations for you tonight. All right, thanks, Norm. Okay, Mark Howe has a presentation on flaming LED lights.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to do this before my camera dies and we get another camera set up. All right, first slide. Where I would love to take credit for this project. It came from a YouTube video that Adam Savage did. Next slide, and this is what it actually looks like in operation. When you first turn the light on, it's flaming. If you invert the light, it is still flaming and has the flames going up. When you turn it off and right back on again, it becomes a beacon light. When you turn it off and back on again, it becomes a solid light. And off and on one more time, and it's back to the flaming light again. Next slide. Notice the blue centerpiece. You can separate the top and the bottom from this blue centerpiece. Next slide. You can use a knife or a screwdriver to remove the top and the bottom. Whatever you use, be careful. Hold the centerpiece with a pair of pliers, not your fingers. Next slide. Once you remove the bottom, you'll see 2 wires. Before you cut them, make sure it is not screwed into a socket and the power is off. You'll want to trim these wires very short so they will not touch any other wires. You can also use a little hot glue to coat the ends of the wires if you want. Next slide. Next, you're going to want to look around the base of the circular LED circuit board. You'll find 3 solder connection points. Next slide. Number 1, solder a red wire onto the terminal marked with a plus sign. Look very carefully, they're small. Number 2, solder a black wire onto the terminal marked with a minus sign. Again, they're very small. Next slide. Once you have the wires soldered on, you may want to add shrink tubing to keep the wires from shorting out. Next slide. You will want to pull the wires through the gap in the center bracket so the wires come out of the bottom of the unit. Next slide. Now you're ready to remount your top cover back onto the center bracket. It should snap back on very easily. Please don't pinch your fingers. Next slide. Next we'll talk about power for these units. I use solar charged car batteries to power most all my lights, so I have to dumb the power down to about 5.5 volts from the normal 12 to 14 volts that we have. So our question to ponder is, how are you going to power this unit? If you do the same as I, it requires about 5.5 volts DC up to about 6.5. I would stay closer to 5.5 though. I have had one of these lights burn out on me. I have purchased some voltage regulators so I can power them from my 12 to 14 volt solar setup. You can also use a 4 battery AA or AAA battery pack, and that will work just fine as well. Next slide. These voltage regulators can be purchased at Vetco for around $10 each. They actually have a meter on them. These voltage regulators can be purchased on Amazon for about $3 each. You have to have a VOM to make sure you set the voltage right. Next slide. Here I have soldered wires onto the VIN, which is voltage input, and VOUT, which is voltage output. Next slide. To keep the circuit board dry, I've also purchased a small box from Vetco, normally ranging $5 to $9 for the larger board. I notched each end of the box and sealed the wires in hot glue. You can also see that I added an air dryer to help keep moisture away. Next slide. Applying power, 12 volts DC, to the voltage regulator, you can see that it's reading closer to 8.5 volts DC. We need 5.5 to a max of 6.5 volts. Next slide. Using a small screwdriver, the voltage is adjusted down by turning the variable inductor clockwise or counterclockwise until you arrive at the desired 5.5 to 6.5 volts. Next slide. Once you have your power set, you can operate these in any number of ways. I love them in older lanterns, such as this lantern here. This was my father-in-law's from when he worked on the New York Central Railroad. And you do not have to gut the lanterns. Just set the units inside, turn it on, and I found that these will run on a set of 4 AA batteries for around 36 to 48 hours. The same goes for rechargeable batteries. I've had one hanging on my 12-volt solar setup for the last year with no problems. Comes on at dusk for a few hours, and when we get up in the morning, it's on again to greet us. Here's a video clip from a year ago when I set these lights up. All right. And there we have our light. Yeah. Well, I already have a plug out there, so we're going to go plug this in, see what it looks like. So what do y'all think about that? It's a little better if I stand where it's shaded. And then of course we have this, which has 3 flaming lights. Okay, we'll come back tonight when we have some darkness to see these lights. So here we are looking at the new lights. Here is our new light with the flaming, with the candles in it. And here's our other lantern, and then of course our string of Christmas lights, all run from the solar panels. So here's a little closer picture of our flaming light, the lantern, and then of course all of the Christmas lights. They also look great in a house for a house on fire effect. So in what other manner would any of you consider running these flaming lights? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you down the rails, and God bless.